The first time I saw a human touch a Vrakken wolf, I nearly voided my digestive tract right there in the observation bay. And trust me, when you're a Zeltharian with 3 stomachs, that's not just an expression, it's a legitimate medical emergency. Let me back up a bit, because you need to understand what we were dealing with here. The Vrakken wolves aren't your average predator, no. These things are essentially living nightmares, wrapped in fur and teeth, and an attitude problem that would make a black hole seem friendly. They stand about 2 meters tall at the shoulder, weigh roughly 400 kilograms of pure muscle and murder, and possess claws that can slice through reinforced durasteel like it's warm butter. Their bite force, let's just say I once watched one crack open a cargo container that was rated to survive planetary re-entry. For fun, these creatures had been the apex predators on Vrakka Prime for roughly 8 million years before the Galactic Council even knew the planet existed. When the first survey team landed there, bless their naive little hearts, 3 of them were dead within the first hour. The other 2 survived only because they had the good sense to never leave their shuttle. The Council immediately classified Vrakka Prime as a Level 9 death world and quarantined the entire system. That was 200 years ago. So naturally, when the humans showed up and asked if they could study the Vrakken wolves, we all assumed they were joking. Classic human humor, right? Those funny little primates with their odd facial expressions and bizarre social customs. Except they weren't joking. Not even a little bit. Commander Kilez, that's me by the way. I was the station director for Research Outpost Gamma 7, which happened to be the closest facility to the Vrakka quarantine zone. When the human research vessel Tenacity requested docking clearance, I figured they wanted to observe from a safe distance, maybe run some long-range scans. You know, sensible science stuff. Instead, their team leader, a human woman named Dr. Yuki Tanaka, walked into my office with a proposal that made my secondary brain shut down from pure shock. She wanted to land on Vrakka Prime. She wanted to approach the wolves. And here's the best part. She wanted to touch them. With all due respect, Dr. Tanaka, I said, trying very hard to keep my cranial tendrils from quivering visibly. That's the most suicidal scientific proposal I've heard in my 43 years of service. And I once had a colleague suggest using a singularity generator to study temporal mechanics. He no longer exists in this timeline. Yuki just smiled at me, that unsettling way humans bare their teeth when they're pleased, and said, "We've reviewed all the data. We think we can do this safely." Safely. She said safely. About approaching creatures that had killed more sentient beings than the entire Krell invasion fleet. But here's the thing about humans, and I know this now after working with them for 3 years, when they say they think they can do something, they usually can. It's terrifying. Really. The rest of us in the galaxy, we evolved on nice, reasonable worlds, with sensible gravity and predators that followed logical behavioral patterns. Humans, they evolved on a Class 12 death world, where everything, and I mean everything, was actively trying to kill them. The weather wanted them dead. The plants wanted them dead. The microorganisms, the insects, the mammals, the reptiles, even the fish, all of them spent millions of years trying to murder humanity into extinction. And somehow, impossibly, humans didn't just survive. They thrived. They climbed to the top of their planet's food chain by being more stubborn, more adaptable, and more absolutely insane than anything else that wanted to eat them. So, against my better judgment, and the judgment of literally every other species on the station, I approved their mission. What's the worst that could happen? I mean, besides the obvious complete and total death of their entire team, the Council had already written off Vrakka Prime anyway. The human team consisted of 5 people. Yuki, who was their xenobiologist, Dmitry Volkov, their animal behaviorist, Amara Okafor, their medic, Jinsu Park, their engineer, and Raf Castellanos, their, well, I never quite understood Raf's official title, but he seemed to be there to carry heavy things and make jokes at inappropriate times. Very human professions, really. They spent 2 weeks preparing, running simulations, studying every scrap of data we had on Vrakken wolves. The rest of the station's crew, we had about 47 researchers from 12 different species. We all watched them with a mixture of fascination and horror. It was like watching someone carefully plan their own funeral while whistling a cheerful tune. The day of the mission, I insisted on being in the observation bay. If these humans were going to get some shield, I wanted to witness it. For science. And also because I'd grown rather fond of them during their stay, and it seemed wrong to let them die without at least watching. Their shuttle, a compact vessel called the Darwin because of course they named it after their most famous evolution scientist, descended through Vrakka Prime's atmosphere without incident. The planet itself was actually quite beautiful, if you could ignore the everything wants to kill you aspect. Dense forests, massive mountain ranges, crystalline. No wait, I can't use that word. Clear blue lakes that sparkled in the double sunlight. They landed in a clearing about 3 kilometers from a known Vrakken wolf den. That's when things got interesting. Observation bay to Darwin. We have visual on your position, I said into the comm system, my voice probably shaking more than I wanted to admit. Please confirm you're receiving telemetry. Confirmed, Gamma 7, Yuki's voice came back, calm as if she were discussing lunch plans. We're suiting up now. Should be exiting the shuttle in approximately 5 minutes. Suiting up. Let me tell you about their suits. When I first saw them, I laughed. Actually laughed. The humans had refused our standard Xeno research armor, reinforced plates, energy shielding, built-in weaponry, in favor of what looked like slightly thick fabric suits, with some basic environmental protection. Yuki explained they needed mobility and wanted to appear non-threatening. Non-threatening. To creatures that could disembowel a battle tank. But here's where it gets weird. The suits weren't just fabric, they were covered in some kind of chemical compound that the humans had synthesized based on Vrakken wolf pheromone analysis. They smelled like, well, according to my olfactory sensors, they smelled like a mixture of Vrakken territory markers, submission signals, and, I'm not making this up, something the wolves apparently found calming. The humans had basically turned themselves into walking please don't eat me, I'm friendly signs. I watched through the external cameras as the shuttle door opened and the 5 humans stepped out onto Vrakka Prime's surface. They moved slowly, deliberately, keeping their hands visible and their postures low. Dmitri carried some kind of organic material. Later I learned it was meat from Earth, specifically beef, which the humans had determined had a similar protein structure to what Vrakken birds naturally hunted. They're insane, muttered Travax, my Korthian assistant, all 4 of his eyes wide with disbelief. Completely, utterly insane. Yes, I agreed, unable to look away from the screens. But let's see what happened. What happened was nothing. For about 20 minutes, absolutely nothing. The humans walked through the forest, moving at a pace that seemed agonizingly slow. Every few minutes, Dmitri would place small pieces of the earth meat on the ground, creating a trail. Yuki occasionally made soft vocalizations, not words, just gentle sounds that apparently mimicked young Vrakken wolf communication. Then, through the tree line, we saw movement. 3 Vrakken wolves emerged from the shadows, and I swear every being in the observation bay stopped breathing simultaneously. Even the Metherians, who technically don't breathe in the traditional sense, stopped their gas exchange cycles. These weren't just any wolves. These were massive adults, probably the alpha members of their pack. The largest one, a male based on the cranial ridges, had to be at least 2.5 meters at the shoulder. His fur was a deep charcoal color with streaks of silver along his spine, and when he opened his mouth to taste the air, I counted 47 teeth. Yes, I counted. Terror makes you focus on weird details. The humans froze. Not in panic, in controlled stillness. This was the moment, the absolute point of no return where everything could go catastrophically wrong. Yuki slowly, and I mean glacially slowly, lowered herself into a crouch. Not a threatening crouch, mind you. More like, how do I describe this? Like she was making herself smaller, less imposing. Her team followed her lead, all 5 humans essentially making themselves into non-threatening lumps on the ground. The alpha wolf took a step forward, then another. His massive paws barely made a sound on the forest floor. which was terrifying in itself because something that large should not be that quiet. Behind him, the other two wolves fanned out slightly, flanking positions. Hunting behavior. Oh gods, they were using hunting behavior. Commander, Trevax whispered, his primary manipulator tentacles trembling. Shouldn't we do something? Like what? I shot back, my own voice barely under control. Send a rescue team? They'd be dead before they reach the planet's surface. We can only watch. The Alpha was now less than 5 meters from Yuki. I could see his nostrils flaring, processing the scents coming from the humans, his eyes, 4 of them, arranged in a way that gave him nearly 360-degree vision, fixed on the crouching figures with an intensity that made me glad I was safely in orbit. Then Dmitri did something that made my central nervous system almost shut down completely. He slowly, carefully extended his hand, still holding that piece of earth meat toward the Alpha Wolf. No. No. Someone in the observation bay was chanting. Might have been me. Probably was me. The Alpha Wolf's head lowered. His massive muzzle moved toward Dmitri's outstretched hand. Those jaws could have taken the human's entire arm off in one bite. Time seemed to slow down. You know that sensation where everything becomes hyper-real and you're aware of every single detail, the way the double suns cast shadows through the trees, the slight breeze moving through the wolf's fur, the absolute stillness of the humans. The wolf took the meat, just took it. Gently, almost delicately, he lifted the offering from Dmitri's hand with his front teeth and swallowed it in one gulp. Then, and this is where things got truly bizarre, he sat down. This apex predator, this creature that had killed trained warriors in full combat armor, sat down like a dog. An absolutely massive, terrifying dog. But the posture was unmistakable. Did that just? Trevax couldn't finish his sentence. Yes, I said, not believing my own words. Yes, it did. Yuki slowly reached into her supply pack and retrieved another piece of meat. She didn't throw it, she held it in her open palm, waiting. The Alpha watched her for a long moment, those 4 eyes processing, calculating, deciding. Then he moved forward, closing the distance between them to less than a meter, and took the meat from her hand just as gently as he had from Dmitri. But here's where the humans showed why they're the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Even when they're trying to be peaceful, Yuki didn't stop. While the Alpha was chewing, she slowly, incredibly slowly, raised her other hand and extended it toward his head. She's not, breathed Trevax. She wouldn't, she did. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, xenobiologist from Earth, raised her bare hand and placed it on top of a Vrakken wolf's head. And then, in a moment that I will remember for the rest of my extremely long Zeltharian life, she scratched behind his ears. The Alpha Wolf's response was, I don't even have words. His eyes half closed, his massive head tilted slightly into her hand, and he made a sound, a deep, rumbling vibration that our audio sensors picked up clearly, that could only be described as contentment. Pleasure. The galactic terror of Vrakka Prime was experiencing what humans apparently call scritches, and he was enjoying it. I'm hallucinating, someone announced in the observation bay. This is a stress-induced hallucination. I've finally lost it after 40 years in deep space research. But it wasn't a hallucination. Over the next hour, we watched as all 5 humans gradually made contact with all 3 wolves. Amara, the medic, actually managed to perform a basic health examination on one of the smaller ones. Jinsu took biological samples, 4, saliva, even managed to clip a claw sample with the wolves' apparent cooperation. Rafe, who I'd thought was just there for comic relief, turned out to be documenting everything with sophisticated recording equipment, capturing every moment of this impossible interaction. The breakthrough moment came when the Alpha Yuki had started calling him Titan over the comms, because humans love naming things, actually rolled over onto his side and allowed her to examine his underbelly. His underbelly, the most vulnerable part of a predator's anatomy, and he was just showing it to her. Trusting her. How? Trevax finally managed to form a complete sentence. How are they doing this? I pulled up the biochemical analysis that was running on the human's suit compounds. It's not just the pheromones, I said, studying the data with growing amazement. Look at this. Their body language, the way they're moving. It's perfect pack submission behavior. They've spent weeks studying every recording we had, learning to communicate in ways the wolves instinctively understand. But the other teams, another researcher spoke up, a Drellian named Korthus. The ones who died, they had suits, weapons, everything. These humans have nothing. That's exactly the point, I said, finally understanding. The previous teams looked like threats. Heavily armed, heavily armored threats. The wolves responded appropriately. They defended their territory. But the humans, they're not presenting as threats at all. They're presenting as potential pack members. By the end of day 1, the humans had made contact with 7 different Vrakken wolves. By day 3, they had a pack of 12 regularly visiting their campsite. Yes, they set up a campsite, because apparently spending weeks on the surface of a death world is just something humans do casually. By the end of the first week, Yuki was sleeping in the middle of a wolf pile, using Titan as a pillow. Let me repeat that for emphasis. A human was using a Vrakken wolf as a pillow and surviving. The research they gathered over the next 2 months was extraordinary. The wolves weren't just mindless killers, they were highly intelligent, social creatures with complex pack dynamics and sophisticated communication systems. They were dangerous, yes, but only when threatened or defending territory. The previous survey teams had violated every possible rule of wolf social behavior without realizing it. The humans, though, they understood. Because on Earth, humans had lived alongside wolves for thousands of years. They'd learned to read canine body language, to communicate through posture and tone, to build trust through patience and respect. What seemed like insane bravery to the rest of us was actually applied knowledge from their own planet's history. When the mission finally concluded and the Darwin returned to Gamma 7, the humans brought back not just data, but actual video footage of Rafe playing, and I use this term with complete accuracy, playing fetch with a Vrakken wolf. Fetch. With a stick that was actually a small tree trunk. The wolf would retrieve it and bring it back, tail wagging, waiting for another throw. The Galactic Council's response to the mission report was mixed. Some species declared the humans dangerously insane and proposed restricting their access to classified death worlds. Others, like my own people, saw something different. We saw a species that had learned to understand predators not as enemies to be feared or destroyed, but as fellow beings with their own logic and motivations. 6 months later, humans were hired as the primary consultants for wildlife management on 12 different worlds. A year after that, Vrakka Prime was reclassified from Level 9 Death World to Level 5 Research World, with the stipulation that all initial contact missions include at least one human behavioral specialist. Yuki's team published their findings under the title Interspecies Communication Through Evolved Understanding, a case study in predator-prey relationship dynamics on high-risk worlds. It became required reading at every xenobiology institute in the galaxy. Dmitri started a consulting firm specializing in dangerous fauna interaction. Amara developed new medical protocols for treating injuries from megafauna encounters. Jinsu designed better environmental suits based on the mission's success. And Rafe wrote a best-selling book called I Played Fetch with Death and Live to Tell About It. As for me, I learned something valuable from watching those humans work. The galaxy is full of things we fear, things we avoid, things we quarantine and declare too dangerous to approach. But sometimes, just sometimes, the danger isn't in the thing itself, but in how we choose to meet it. The humans didn't conquer the Vrakken wolves through superior firepower or technology. They didn't outsmart them or trap them. They did something far more radical and, frankly, far more human. They approached with respect, with patience, with genuine curiosity about understanding another species on its own terms. I still see Yuki sometimes when I visit Earth's orbital stations. She's always got new projects, new impossible missions that make my digestive tracts clench. Last time we talked, she mentioned something about approaching the crystalline sentinels of Theta Proxima. Wait, I can't use that word. The massive glass-like sentinels that no one has successfully communicated with in 400 years. I just smiled and approved her proposal. Because if I've learned anything from working with humans, it's this. When they say they can do something impossible, they're usually right. And when they stand calmly touching something that makes the rest of us freeze in fear, they're not being stupid or suicidal. They're just being human. And in this vast, dangerous, beautiful galaxy of ours, sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can be.